My name is Amy Pressman. I am the co-founder of Medallia. We are the leader in customer experience software. Now, we are B2B, so some of you may not have heard about us, but last year we were number 7 on Forbes' top 100 private SaaS companies, and we're kind of a unicorn. So it's been a while. I think a number of you are in startups. It's been a while since I've sat in your seat, but I remember it really vividly, and I want to try and share some experiences that I hope will be helpful to you. So a few weekends ago, I was out buying wine for a dinner party I was having. And I went to this chain store that is in my area, which is San Francisco Bay Area, and it was an unfamiliar location to me. So I didn't know where to find the wines that I usually get. And I grabbed an employee and I said, hey, here are the wines, can you help me find them? And he grabbed them for me and he said, you know, if you like these wines, you are gonna love this wine that we just got in. We had a tasting of it this past weekend. It was phenomenal. He pulls down this bottle, he shows it to me. I don't know the label, I've never seen it before. And he said, that's understandable, it's actually kind of a small producer. And then he does that thing that wine guys always do. He starts talking about like the oaky tannins and the aftertaste of blackberry and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, stop, just tell me, is this wine yummy? And he said, yeah, it's yummy, you are gonna love this wine. So I buy the wine, take it home. A couple days later, I take it down and pour a glass for my husband. And he sits there, he takes a sip and he said, wow. And I said, what? And he said, where did you get this wine? And I said, why? And he said, oh my God, did somebody like give this to us? And I said, no, why? And he said, it's awful. And I took a taste and it was awful. And suddenly I had this flashback to buying wine like 3-4 years ago. And at that time, I used to buy wine exactly as I bought this bottle of wine, based on the advice of experts. So employees in a store, sommelier at restaurant, maybe a magazine like Wine Spectator. I would look at expert reviews, and I would choose that wine. And most of the time, it was pretty good, and occasionally, it was awful. And what has happened in the past couple of years, and I have no financial interest in this company, but there's this app. It's great. See? It's called Vivino. I don't know if any of you know about it. I don't know if it's here in Europe, but it is fantastic. You basically take a picture of a wine label, or you can take a picture of a wine list, and it'll give you the ratings. And what I have found, the ratings of other wine drinkers, other users. And what I have found over the years is that if there are at least 100 people who have rated the wine, and if it's a 4.0 or above, I will like the wine. Now, I may love it, I may just like it, but I will like the wine. If it's 3.9, we're kind of in the border zone, and if it's below 3.9, I won't like it. So just for fun, I actually Vivino this wine that I had bought based on the recommendation of the wine store guy, and it was a 3.7. So had I bought the wine the way I'm used to buying wine, in the last couple of years, I would not have bought this bottle of wine. And what I realized in that moment, and think about this for yourselves, what I realized in that moment, this doesn't just apply to wine. This is how I buy everything. Products, I look at Amazon reviews. Restaurants, I look at Yelp, I look at Google. Before I buy any product and service, I am researching it online. And it turns out I am not alone. 81%, customer experience, what I found out, has become the biggest driver of purchase behavior. So I am relying more on the customer experiences of complete strangers than I am relying on anything else. And it turns out that I'm not alone. 81% of online Americans actually research products before they buy them online. Nearly 70% of global consumers actually trust opinions posted online, second only to their friends and family. And if you think about that, that's a huge outsized impact, because your friends and family only know a limited subset of products and services that you might be considering, but online, you know, the universe is pretty much has experienced whatever you're considering. So it's a huge impact. And I'm thinking to myself, if this is, if customer experience is now the biggest driver of purchase behavior, how are executives in companies thinking about this? So I was reminded of a story that I heard a few years ago from the CEO of a healthcare company that does about tens of billions of dollars in revenue every year. And this guy, the CEO, came into work one day, gets a call from his son, who's in high school. And the son had been online looking at social media, and the son said, "Dad, what's going on with the company? You have this huge customer experience fiasco." And the dad said, "No, I don't think so. But thanks for giving me the heads up. I'll check with all my directs." So he hangs up the phone, calls all his direct reports, relays what his son has told him, and his directs say the same thing. "No, this is an unfounded rumor circulating on the internet. Don't worry about it. It is not an issue." And so he's really comfortable until about 3 or 4 hours later at lunch, his phone starts to ring. And all of his directs call him back and they say, "Hey, boss, you know that thing you called me about? Well, it turns out it's true. This issue is real." And think about that. Online customers knew more about what was going on in the company than the executives who are making decisions about how to run that company. That is pretty incredible. Turns out that companies, as they grow, they often get quite distant from their customers. And in fact, I was actually at a meeting about a couple of weeks ago with the heads of Global 2000 companies, and we were discussing a best practice in customer experience, which is where you have senior executives regularly have contact with customers. So maybe they'll man a call center for an hour a quarter, something like that. And all these executives are talking about their experience, discussing this best practice with their leadership teams. And one guy said, "When I told my CMO he had to call customers, she had a really unambiguous reaction." Over my dead body. Now, I am happy to say that this CMO actually did call customers. She did not die, and she became a raving fan of doing this. There was another executive who said, he very sort of cautiously said, yes, I'll call customers. I will do it, but can you give me some coaching? That guy required 2 hours of coaching before he had the confidence to pick up the phone to call a customer. Think about that. Why are executives so wary of customers? And I think it's because, in the words of Jeff Bezos, customers are really difficult to please. They are beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. And it's becoming more of an issue. Right? We did a study recently, and nearly 2/3, 64% of customers expect companies to interact with them in real time. Now, in the US, I am an Amazon Prime member, and whenever I order something that's not from Amazon, and I have to make the decision between paying an exorbitant fee to get it delivered quickly, or I have to wait a couple weeks, I'm incensed. I've been conditioned to believe that I click buy and I'll get it on my doorstep within a day or two. Turns out that nearly 3/4 of customers also expect personalization. And 2/3 of them, 66%, will consider shifting if you don't personalize for them. So here you have this situation where customer experience is your biggest driver of purchase behavior. Executives are pretty far from the customers, and customers are becoming more demanding. Well, there is a group of employees within a company who actually know what's going on with the customers, and those are at the front line. And I have my own personal story of working at the front line. Right before college, I actually worked at a regional restaurant chain that was sort of part hamburger joint and part ice cream parlor. Let's call it Smiley's. Here's a sort of illustrative picture. And I really remember coming to work one day, and the manager was so excited because they had this really new, innovative product that he'd advertised all over the restaurant. And it seems kind of silly today, but that innovation was a salad. And he's really excited about it, and he pulls me over and he says, "Okay, Amy, this is how you make the salad." And he walks me over to this counter, and I'm to open this door, reach in, pull out like a cellophane bag of lettuce, and the lettuce, unlike the picture, which is lush green, this lettuce is iceberg lettuce, and it's kind of white, and it's suspended in a little bit of water. And since it was in this refrigerated box, parts of the lettuce have frozen. So it's got that kind of translucent color that lettuce gets when it freezes. So here we have this picture of lush green lettuce, and what I actually have is whitish green lettuce with streaks of like translucence. And then I'm supposed to put these tomato slices that are pink on the outside and white on the inside, and that's a salad. Well, lo and behold, the first customer orders this salad. I assemble it dutifully. I bring it over to the customer, put it before her, and she looks at it. She's like, what the heck is this? This looks nothing like that picture. I don't want it. Take it back. So I had to take it back. And this happened maybe 2, 3, 4 times, and finally I said, I give up. I can't keep serving this salad. It's awful. It's terrible. So I came up with a solution, which is at this hamburger joint, there was a grill, and next to the grill was a hamburger station with slices of tomato and green lettuce. And the tomatoes were red, the lettuce was deep green. And so anytime anybody ordered a salad, I would race over to the grill, try and avoid the short order cook who was really pissed at me, and I'd pull the lettuce and tomatoes, and I'd assemble a salad, and I'd serve it for the customer. Never got a complaint. And here's the thing. Those executives who decided to introduce the salad to the menu had no idea how their execution of a good idea was causing a lot of customer dissatisfaction. But I at the front line did. But they weren't hearing from me. I also had a solution. Source the ingredients from the same place you source the ingredients from your hamburger station. But that communication was not making it to the people who had decision-making power. So what you find is as companies grow, the people who actually know what's going on with customers often do not have the power to act on it. We actually did a study recently of about 1,000 customer-facing employees across 5 industries, and we found that nearly 2/3, 61%, had ideas for improving customer satisfaction. 43% had ideas for cutting costs, and yet less than 1/3, 31%, were asked for their ideas once a year or less through surveys. And those who gave ideas, a full 33% of companies never acted on that information. So you have a real situation here where the people who know what to do are not empowered to do anything about that. Now, a lot of you are in startups, and startups are different. You have to be different. You have to be close to your customers. Let me give you my own story of starting up. When I started up, I was not terribly entrepreneurial. It was the middle of the dot-com bubble. And we must have been smoking the same thing that everybody else was, because we had some pretty grandiose ideas. And I'm really mortified to say, I spent 9 months working on a business plan. And here's the thing. When I was working on that business plan, I was doing it in an ivory tower. I was in libraries, I was reading articles, I was reading studies. What I was not doing was out talking to prospects, building minimum viable products to test with potential customers. And then after we spent all this preparation on the business plan, we had our first investor pitch. It was a breakfast meeting. Woke up that morning, and it was 9/11. And the world turned upside down. People's lives were disrupted, in some cases horribly so. And for us, it was a pretty minor disruption, but the reality hit us that we were not going to get funding. And in that moment, I think we became true startup entrepreneurs, because at that moment, we started reaching out to prospects and to companies and working really closely with them and co-building our product with them. And everybody was empowered to make them wildly successful. And we actually did that for 10 years. We bootstrapped for 10 years before we took an investment. So startups know that they need to stay close to customers and that everybody needs to be empowered to do what it takes to make that customer successful. Until startups start to find success. What happens? You find that elusive product market fit with your product or with your service, and suddenly you're told scale, scale, scale. And the thing is, there was a time when companies could land on a product or a service and they could sell it for a really, really long time and have a good business. I actually recently read a book on the history of Ford Motor Company. And there's this fantastic quote from the incoming CEO, a guy named Alan Mulally, who's been brought in to turn around Ford, to Bill Ford, who's the outgoing CEO, who's a Ford heir. And he says to him, "You've been going out of business for 30 years. Ford Motor Company was making cars that people did not want to buy, but it was staying in business because it could get those cars off the lot with promotions and discounts. Now today, companies do not have the luxury of decades, as Ford did, and even years to get it right with customers. You can see that in the accelerating rate of bankruptcies. So these are by decade. We're not even through this decade, and you can already see that the number of Fortune 500 bankruptcies has eclipsed previous decades. And I think this trend is going to accelerate in part because one of the biggest buying cohorts are millennials. They're coming into their peak of earning power, and they expect innovation. We did a recent study on them, and nearly 2/3, 64%, are expecting new innovations from their companies. And in fact, they think radically new ways of doing business or new products are normal. That's the world they grew up in. So there's this demand for constant innovation. And I think successful startups know this. They know that they can't just scale the product or service that got product market fit. They have to scale the customer experience. So Amazon did not scale book buying online. It scaled a frictionless customer experience. Uber did not scale ride sharing. It scaled a more seamless customer experience moving from point A to point B. And Airbnb did not scale room sharing or home sharing. It scaled a richer travel experience. The best companies scale customer experience. I think this is a great quote from Steve Jobs. You have to start with a customer's experience and work backward to, in this case, technology, but to the product and service. So as you guys go forward with your startup, I hope you all find product market fit with your products or services. But when you find that thing that fits in the marketplace, remember, you cannot just scale that product or service. You also need to scale the capabilities that enabled you to identify that in the first place. Namely, you have to scale closeness to customers and empowerment of all employees to act and innovate on behalf of the customer. So I want to thank you, wish you the best of luck, and I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you, Amy. Have a seat for a second.
Oh, sure.
Basically, there was just one pressing question, which is the, how do I ask the how was I question? Like, what is the right way to ask customers for review or feedback?
I think that's been changing over the years, but I think customers more and more, they like to do it in text form, very shorthand. I think long surveys with lots of questions is more of the past. So asking really quick text questions or whatever, and then also to be responsive when someone gives you an answer. If someone, I think customers today really want to engage with a company, so the worst thing is for you to ask them for feedback and then not be responsive when they give it. So you really want to enter into a conversation or a dialogue.
So you ask it shortly after it, and then you basically respond again to it.
And that you really want to engage with them and make them almost your partners in developing new products, new innovations.
Okay, fantastic. We have no time for more.
Okay.
This is why, thank you so much for having that.
Okay.
Please give another applause for Amy Pressman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.